For our final Fireside chat today, it's going to be moderated by Namir Khan, founder of MENA FinTech Association. May I please welcome Namir, Omar, and Hisham to the stage, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. So we will kick off quick. So this is a very interesting topic, as always, open banking. I mean, it's a pleasure to talk to you all about open banking quickly over here. So we will try to basically hit the right spots right away and ensure that there's key insights that we're pulling out instantly. Now, open banking has been seriously one of the topics that have been really rising in the region significantly. Now, the reason why we are talking about this here today is that open banking, yes, it's growing, and most importantly, why is it right? Now, open banking in the region right now, I mean, requires, as importantly, a powerful network and most importantly, a very powerful infrastructure. And this is what the region provides significantly. Now, simultaneously, at the same time, when I'm saying a powerful infrastructure, I would just like to also share at the same time, the region itself, and especially the Gulf countries, are leading the 5G deployment as well. And this has been highlighted in one of the recent reports on open banking as well. And with this, I mean, I would like now, ask right away the questions to these leading open banking companies over here. We have Hisham with us, who is the CEO of Lean Technologies. We have Omar as well, who is basically the enterprise head globally for Codebase Technologies. Once again, both of them doing phenomenal work right now in the open banking space over here in the region. Hisham, quick question to you right away. API standards. I mean, yes, we do have a powerful infrastructure. Yes, we do have a powerful network. API standards, your views on that right away.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. And as you said, it's a very important topic that I think is very impactful on the fintech ecosystem of the financial industry and has wide-ranging impacts on the end consumer, SMEs, etc. Open banking, I think, as a term, can be a bit misleading and a bit confusing. So,
Correct.
like a bit of context on what it really does, right? So,
Yeah.
I think in a very brief way, open banking enables fintech companies and third parties to access data on behalf of customers that's stored within financial institutions. Now, this was actually achieved, for many years in the US and other markets, but it wasn't called open banking. It was maybe referred to as data aggregation. Open banking was really introduced in the UK and the EU in 2015 and 2016 as a regulatory policy that basically mandated that banks must build APIs to share that data. Now, if we think about the different implementations of open banking, there's the European view, which is that regulators will mandate that banks must build those APIs to a particular standard or a particular benchmark, but really the responsibility and the onus is on the banks to invest in building those APIs. However, if you look at a market like India, for instance, the government actually went one step further and said, we're going to actually build the integration and build those pipes with each one of those banks. So that creates almost a standard that's governed by the government. And then you look at the free market like the United States, where it's actually governed by the private sector. And banks, fintechs, aggregators, and other entity players or ecosystem players are able to basically build those solutions to meet the challenges and needs of the market. So when we think about open banking standards, it's a very important question because many markets in the Middle East today are considering open banking and how should they roll it out. My belief is that building a one-size-fits-all, whereby you're mandating that each financial institution build APIs to a particular standard to avail particular products, is actually not the most efficient way to go about solving the problem. Because it ends up creating difficult standards that must be met by banks with different legacy systems, with different sophistication, and with different outlooks. At the end of the day, open banking should be viewed as an opportunity, and banks should be able to build it to the standard and specification that they're able to meet based on their own strategy. So I hope that answers your question in a bit of a
No, it does, and
roundabout
it
way.
brings me to the point that I would like to ask Omar now. That Omar, I mean, if you're looking at what Hisham just mentioned, so I mean, one is mandating, and the second is encouragement. How do you see the two playing?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me over here. In terms of mandate, if you think of the word itself, mandate, it basically means that you're forcing someone to do something, whereas encouragement is basically like, hey, this would be a better idea.
Correct.
So when you basically have regulators backing you and encouraging you to basically follow a set standard, it tends to be more easily adopted and acceptable by institutions, not just banks, institutions, but at the same time, non-banking financial institutions and fintechs that want to basically enter and be a part of the open banking ecosystem.
Yeah.
So, ideally, an approach that I've seen a lot of the regulators, especially in the GCC now, that have started to take is they are encouraging organizations to basically follow certain standards and certain best practices
Correct.
towards open banking. So it's basically, as you can see, it's brought a rise to a lot of NBFI organizations and a lot of innovative fintechs that have now started to come in and start offering financial services to basically enhance the overall financial and banking offering that the GCC basically has. So it's now coming up to speed with all the best practices that are happening and all the innovation that we're reading about across the world, especially in the open banking space as well.
So I'm going to come back to you on innovation, but my next question is going to be on the lines of the regulators over here, right? So we have just to tell you about the region, how optimistic this region is about open banking and open finance as we're stepping into it, is going to be that 76% of the regulators of the region are extremely positive about open banking. Right now, as we are having a consensus about open banking in the region, my next question is going to be that, see, there is consensus, but is there an opportunity for standardization in the region, which is going to open up a tremendous amount of opportunities, in the region. Now, as I'm talking about a tremendous opportunity, this is basically on top of the I would say the gold mine, which I call the region is, in terms of the demographics, in terms of the people who are unbanked, in terms of the people, as we were just discussing the credit side of it. It's an open space, and then you have open banking, and then you can look into a standardization element as well. Is that an opportunity you're looking into, and how can we achieve that?
Well, I think it's a bit optimistic to think that the regulators across multiple markets are going to be able to, A, arrive at the same conclusion that open banking must be enacted, and B, arrive at the same conclusion about the method with which to implement
Makes
it.
sense.
Not to mention, obviously, the fragmentation within the financial industry within each one of these markets. I think, if you look at something as basic as power outlets, for as long as we, have had electricity, every country and every region has had a different outlet. And for some reason, we just can't get, together at a table and say, okay, this is the standard that everyone's going to follow.
Yeah.
What that has created, though, is the opportunity for adapters to come and enable you to travel and kind of plug in anywhere without needing to, buy a new charger. And so similarly, when we think about open banking and financial integrations, it's very difficult to envision practically standardization and collaboration at the greater scale immediately. That might be a long-term goal. But what that does create is opportunities for adapters, so to speak, such as the aggregators that enable financial technology companies and financial players to seamlessly integrate with the financial ecosystem in each one of these countries. So I hope that answers your question.
Omar?
Ideally, I wanted to basically bring this up. Thank you for bringing that up. One of the things about open banking that I've seen, especially talking about adapters as well, as you can see, every country basically is exploring different methodologies around open banking as well, different frameworks. So ideally, if you look at EU, how the EU basically has a set standard as well, I think one of the ways to move forward as well is to basically have the regulators talk to each other first, to basically establish that same page format, so everybody knows that, okay, so this is the steps that we're taking forward as well.
Makes sense.
One of the things is in Bahrain, what they've done is they have basically, I think they're almost all the banks now are on customer consent management.
Yeah.
And now they're working towards account aggregation, and by 2021 they plan to basically go into payment initiations as well. So that is one step forward that they have taken as well, which a lot of the other GCC countries are still working towards. So that would be a good example to see that you have one of the regulators within your region who has done this work. So the best would be to take a page out of their book, because they've already done the work. So you don't need to invest financially and from a time perspective into this. So going forward, it makes it far easier as well. So whatever the technologies and the best practices that they are using in a live scenario as well sort of adds to the fact that they can get the same technology and implement it over here, which will later on allow cross-border, also address the question of financial literacy, financial inclusion. It'll allow a unity amongst the GCC countries as well, going forward, especially when you have their finances talking to each other on the same page. The possibilities of political stances, etc., immense. The harmony that we can create as the GCC and MENA region as a whole.
Brilliant. So, so we've spoken about the optimism that we have in the market now. Open banking, not just in the region, but globally has had one of the challenges, which is cybersecurity, right? Which has been a global challenge because open banking means you're opening up everything typically. Then we're heading into open finance more, and we're looking into more asset classes being exposed to it. How are we going to be, it's not that how are we going to tackle the cybersecurity challenge in the region? How are we best fit and best suited to tackle this cybersecurity challenge in the region better than the rest of the world, considering the fact that we have a strong network and a strong infrastructure too?
Right. So I think, obviously, why is cybersecurity important? It's important because of the data privacy and the importance of the payment initiation that's happening on behalf of the customer. No one wants their financial information to be exposed or hacked or breached. And similarly, when we think about cybersecurity, it's a method to protect the customer and protect their data. Now, when we're thinking about the benefits of open banking, obviously the customer will have more competitiveness, more access to products and services that they didn't have access to before. It was mentioned earlier, the unbundling of financial services, and that very much is accelerated by open banking. I actually believe from a cybersecurity perspective, it gives the customer the power, and it puts the customer in the driver's seat. What we need to do is establish well-governed policies and frameworks that ensure that the players in the space, be it fintechs, aggregators, banks, or others, are actually subscribing and playing at a standard that is well-defined and well-subscribed and well-audited. When we think about what that means to the customer, that means that the customer will be able to control the consent that they share with third parties. The customer will be able to revoke consent that they give to third parties. The customer will be able to monitor and have an audit trail of the data that's being accessed on their behalf. And that's actually really positive, because if you think about the digitization and where we're heading in the next 5 or 10 years, it's not just banking data that's important.
Correct.
It's every single set of data that is related to the customer that's important. And they will derive that value from being able to share it selectively and consensually with third parties that they choose to share it with. So if we think about healthcare, if we think about telco, if we think about utilities, if we think about all the other sets of data that paint the digital profile of the customer, if we start with a strong kind of standard and establish a good understanding of what that consent should be like and what consent management should be like, I believe we'll be, obviously reaping all the rewards without exposing ourselves to much risk.
One of the things that I was basically discussing with one of my colleagues as well around the cybersecurity, especially around open banking, was a lot of organizations and banks that are basically moving towards open banking initiatives. One of the key things that they basically have been doing is researching the profiles of the TPPs that they basically would be working with third-party payment providers as well, because one thing is they want to protect their customers' interests as best as they basically can. Mm-hmm. So by basically seeing that you are partnering up, or you basically are leveraging a payment provider's technology, etc. and so forth, and any other data organization that you're going to be working with, it is imperative that you basically audit the technology that's behind it. So you basically are aware of what could be the possible, if any, shortfalls that are coming when they basically go live. At the same time, how would they basically mitigate it? And as Hisham had basically mentioned, have very strong policies, build a foundation that basically allows the least amount of risk. At the end of the day, as we've seen with almost every piece of technology, there will always be a risk. Risk is something that we cannot escape. However, we can always mitigate it, we can plan for it, and we can account for what could possibly go wrong and prepare ourselves for it. However, as technology is getting more and more robust, and frameworks and cybersecurity policies and organizations with their newfound methodologies are getting more stronger and stronger, that risk basically is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, but it will inevitably.
So, Omar, this brings me to the point of, an important point, which I would like to again highlight is where the region is leading itself. So we have initiatives like the UAE Pass one, and then we have the Bahrain eKYC initiative as well. We have something coming up in Saudi as well. Now, these are initiatives that are only complementing the open banking movement to an accelerated, it's only accelerating it. So we have COVID acceleration, and we have the initiatives that are then accelerating it as well. Now, how important do you see the criticalities of these initiatives are to be able to complement the growth of open banking or the evolution from open banking to open finance in the region?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think to understand it, you have to think about what is the cycle, or what is the flow that a customer has to go through in order to share their data or initiate a payment. And I think the most critical portion of that flow is the authorization bit, right? Like, how do you authenticate and authorize that an end user is who they say they are? And this is where these initiatives that you're referring to come in really handy. And so in Saudi, the program that you were referring to is called Abshir. It's the e-government platform that is launched and managed by the Ministry of Interior. And it's basically a unified portal that has a national identity number and a phone number that's linked to every customer that's verified. And so all of the OTP messages, all of the other verification that happens through those channels. Similarly, what we have here in the UAE and Bahrain are very strong bases and foundations upon which you can build digital solutions that rely on authenticating a customer and validating their consent.
Digital solutions for, once again, an extremely untapped market in which is there to be served, right? So it just fits in well. And Omar, your perspective to this?
Well, I personally think that the UAE Pass and the Bahrain KYC has basically opened up the floodgates for new products as well, for customers as well. Organizations have basically tapped into this and leveraged the benefits of cost saving and the new products that they have basically been able to create around these initiatives as well. One of the ones being one of the examples that I've basically seen overseas out of the GCC was in Malaysia as well. There's a platform called Kinetic that's basically coming up over there, and what they basically are doing is they're aggregating customer data from an SME perspective,
Okay.
and basically allowing financial organizations to basically connect to it. So if there is a institution that wants to open a bank account, a corporate bank account with one bank, they can basically, and they want to open a separate bank account with another bank. They don't have to go through the tedious paperwork process, loss of time and money and customer acquisition costs. It's like an instant flip of a switch. Around this, banks have now been able to innovate newer products as well. They've been they've been exploring more opportunities to work together with telcos and various other utility companies as well to basically cater towards new products that customers who basically can explore.
So very interesting point you mentioned around SMEs, and I'm sure Hisham is quite passionate about SMEs because I heard you talking about it. So open banking, SMEs, plugging in, the regional opportunity, how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, SMEs comprise a pretty substantial portion of the economy in this region. And when you think about the hundreds of thousands of small and medium businesses that don't have access to credit, this was highlighted in the previous panel as well, how are you going to be able to incentivize the banks to give them credit? Really, that's very difficult to happen. It's been tried and tested. Banks are ultimately more focused on the large corporates that they know with large balance sheets that can satisfy very large credit lines. When you're thinking about those small and medium enterprises, they need credit to survive, to grow, to, in some cases, even provide working capital loans. And then you kind of think about what the fintech opportunity is. If you're able to integrate with the bank account of an SME, for example,
Yeah.
and access their transaction history and actually view all of the invoices and understand in real time the health and success and risk framework of this SME, then you would be able to underwrite and provide them with a credit line pretty seamlessly. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now, for instance, in Saudi Arabia. You're seeing many new businesses coming in the invoice-based financing, where SMEs are now finally able to get loans for 3 or 6 months, and they're very happily kind of offsetting that against invoices that they're owed. So I think this is the tip of the iceberg, and I think what open banking will do is it will democratize access to financial services, and it will create an ecosystem where competition is thriving, and hopefully the consumer and the SME can win.
Fantastic. Omar, your views to this before we close this?
One of the things in Bahrain actually, as well, just to bring back around SME and financing, is one of the initiatives that a bank over there that we are working with has done is they have utilized the same principles around KYC, and they have allowed the population of Bahrain to be having access to instant financing. So customers can basically just go in, scan their ID card, and it basically goes through the necessary processes, and within, I think, under 5 minutes, they basically get a approval for their financing. So as Hisham had basically said, yes, the possibilities of what open banking is going to bring, not only just for the evolution of the banking ecosystem and environment as well, but at the same time for banks and technology itself is limitless.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I mean, this basically highlights the overall opportunity that we have in the region that we are basically serving. Once again, the region has witnessed tremendous growth lately when it comes to fintech largely. We have seen a boom of fintech in the region, and this is just the very beginning, as we all have highlighted. I mean, the previous panels as well. Simultaneously, we have also seen more new initiatives coming in as well, and I'm sure the coming year is going to be, which is 2021. We all hope it to be a great year for all of us, and we do see great initiatives being executed here in the region as well. And this kind of tells you why this region is a gold mine for fintech itself, right? And it's all about locking down, identifying the opportunities, and then locking them down. And the good thing is that the region is pretty set to embrace. We have been very fast in terms of adopting new technology. We have been fast in terms of welcoming new technologies into the region. And most importantly, it's just not basically us welcoming it, it's the consumer who basically is demanding it. Because it's, once again, and it's just not me saying it or Hisham or Omar saying it or any one of us saying it, it's the numbers that are basically projecting why the region is basically hungry for new technological products, services that are only going to make life a lot more easy, accessible, convenient, affordable, and transparent for the common user. And this is all what we're trying to achieve. So thank you very much for being here. And any questions by anyone? Great. So we're good to go. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.